Hey, this is Blake Chastain, and you're listening to Let's Talk About Text. It's a show where Scott Okamoto and I talk with our guests about what we're reading. That's the whole deal. You're up to speed. Here's the show. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Let's Talk About Text. My name is Blake Chastain. My co-host is...
My name's Scott Okamoto, and I'm excited to talk about texts.
And our first guests with us this week are the hosts of Go Home Bible, You're Drunk, Tori Williams and Justin Gentry.
Hi, y'all.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
It's one of my favorite podcasts. I always say it. That's
so very good to
Go
be
Home
here.
Bible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We all know each other from a different sort of corner of the internet, where a lot of times we've talked about things like religion and politics, religion and society, post-religion, all of those really fun, totally not dour topics that don't have any relevance to the state of United States politics, thankfully, for all of us.
Yeah, we're all crying right now.
Yes. So the idea behind this show really is that we're just going to talk about books or articles or anything that we've read recently that we've enjoyed. And this is really just a fun place to appreciate and talk about the writing and authors and other commentators that we appreciate as people, especially in a time like this when we need a little bit of levity. And that's really the point of this show. It's not supposed to be a deep dive into anything really, but just a sample amongst four people of what is making them happy, what is giving them a little bit of joy amidst a pretty sorrowful time in a lot of other ways. So what I wanted to do before we sort of go through our all of our various books or other texts that we want to talk about is actually, I have one quick starter question for everyone. And I'm just curious, what were you like as a kid around reading? Were you a voracious reader, or did you have a different sort of relationship to books or reading in general? Scott, let's start with you.
Oh, sure. Pick on the English teacher. I loved reading.
That's right.
And I'm supposed to say that, but I did. I found I was the only Asian kid at my very diverse school early on, and then I moved to an all-white school. And I found reading kind of took me to different places and different worlds, and I found myself as a young kid really wanting to be a writer because I was so inspired by things like Tom Sawyer and I don't know what kid's book. Wind in the Willows was a big one. And I don't remember, don't ask me, I'm not going to talk about that book because I can't remember what it's about. But I just remember being really inspired by that and other books and kind of experiencing early on that feeling when you get to the end, toward the end of a book, and you're already kind of sad that you're not going to interact with these characters and these spaces anymore, and kind of putting off reading the last chapter. But then I had to write a book report, so I had to do it. And so yeah, reading factored large into my upbringing. No, and I didn't have parents. I didn't come from a Christian background where I was forbidden to read anything. If it wasn't a book, I could have read it. I could have brought home the Book of Satan, and my parents would be like, "Yeah, cool." Well, maybe not. Yeah, cool, but they'd probably keep an eye on me. But in general, anything in the library, I could read, and so I really relished that freedom to choose anything I wanted to read.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. What about you, Tori?
I also loved reading. We went to, growing up, I was homeschooled, so I didn't get a lot of exposure to other places, things, people, ideas, but we went to the library every single week, religiously. And that I think was really cool because I was able to be exposed to a lot of different ideas, and there was a lot of I was able to have some really normal experiences, which was very unusual for me personally. And yeah, got to, I started volunteering at the library when I was 10 or 11 years old, pretty young. And so, yeah, books have always been a really, really big part of my life. And there were definitely a lot of actually restrictions around what I was allowed to read, especially like once I became a teenager. And so I kind of had to advocate for being allowed to read things I wanted to read, and kind of like, I'm inclined to stand up for myself, I think, in general, but that really taught me to like go to bat for myself and to advocate for myself, that like I should be allowed to read things that seem interesting to me, because obviously it's reading, right? And I didn't grow up to be a Satanist or anything. I'm just an atheist, so mission accomplished.
2 out of 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what about you, Justin?
Yes, I read a lot. This is going to be a little winding, but I think the first big kid book, like novella, I read was the novelization of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah, I love that so much.
So that's probably the first like novel I read, and that really set my taste forever afterwards. But like I just liked weird quote weird stuff. I wasn't allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons, but I read a lot of Dungeons and Dragons based books, a lot of R.A. Salvatore stuff. Hats off to any Dritz Stewart fans out there. Like if I'm just saying monosyllabic words, that's fine to you. That's fine. So I read a lot of that stuff, and eventually read Lord of the Rings. And I went, Scott, when you said like you didn't want to finish a book, I think I read Lord of the Rings up to the Scouring of the Shire very quickly, and then I probably sat on it for like a year. Like I was just like, I don't want this to end. Plus the Scouring of the Shire is kind of a letdown anyway, but just like the I just remember being like, I don't know that I want to finish this. So yeah, I think I always was reading, and I think I was allowed to read. My reading was allowed to stray pretty far away. I read a bunch of books with my dad by an author, Catherine Kerr. She wrote these books. I think they were the Devery, I don't know, some kind of fantasy book. It was like loosely based on like Celtic mythology. There was like time travel involved, or like time skipping. Like the story took place over like multiple time periods. And so like just kind of stuff like that was just kind of odd, and it was a way for me to bond with my dad too. And so so I've always read. I think I probably read less now than I have before. That's just mostly just because of time. But it's something I've always enjoyed and always have wanted to have a part of my life.
Yeah. And for me, just to round us out, I also really loved reading like sort of whatever was available. Like there were a couple of like elementary school assigned books that I really latched onto. This is like Indiana public school stuff here. So Maniac McGee, Where the Red Fern Grows, which is one of those devastating something terrible happens to an animal.
Yeah.
Rite of Passage type
right
books
now,
for
just mentioning it.
But I think that was the first book I read twice. And then I also loved and still love comics. But yeah, I got into, like, around middle school age, I got into the Star Wars expanded universe novels, like the original Timothy Zahn, like Thrawn trilogy, and a whole bunch of other nerdy stuff. My dad got me into a fantasy series called by David Eddings. It was a 5-book series called The Belgariad. And then another 5-book series after that with the same characters called The Malorian. I think that author's reputation has gone down a lot in recent years, so you probably don't hear about that series as much. But it was like it was another point of connection also with my dad, and he did have me read The Hobbit first, and then I couldn't get past the birthday party for like 10 years in the Fellowship of the Ring. Like I would keep trying to pick it up, and I didn't get past it until actually I saw the first movie, and then I devoured them after that. So yeah, I've always loved reading, and And so that's, to me, like a lot of times I feel like I'm more of a reader than a writer. I like reading and
Hey,
more than
first
anything.
thing we teach in writing workshops is that writers have to read. And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And I think our nerd we've really established our nerd cred here. That was impressive.
Yes.
I'm in awe
Yes.
of us. So yeah, go team.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're a bunch of book nerds, which is great because now it's time to talk about what you're reading. So this is the first episode, so this is a little rough.
Yeah.
We haven't really worked out our various different roles on the show yet. So Scott, how about I hand it over to you? Do you want to talk about what you're into these days?
It feels rude for the host to go first, but
No, you need to because you gotta show us what you want.
oh my God. Okay.
The way.
If only I knew what I want. All right, so I'm going a little satirical today, so I put that disclaimer out. I went my whole adulthood without reading I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And for another podcast, I had to read it last month. And here I'm switching to satire. Oh my God, y'all. That is the most hilarious book I have ever read. If you want to laugh out loud adventure into this other world where sex and gender are criminalized, and it's like this dystopian comedic book, and it begins with this opening scene of a wedding where you all have read it, right? You all
Yeah.
read, it was like required.
Spoilers, jeez, Scott.
So sorry, I didn't mean to diminish your Christian cred. It opens. Picture this: it's a wedding, and the bride. It's her perfect day. I'm probably elaborating a little bit too much, but the birds are flying and the flowers are placed and everyone's dressed up, and she gets to the altar and the groom comes, or I guess she walks in, and the groom's standing there with like all these women, because this is what happens. He had relations with women before her, and so there, and she says, "But honey, who are these women?" And he says, "Oh," and he's like cold-blooded about it too. He's like, "Oh, well, these are the women I slept with, and I've given parts of myself to each of them, and so that's why they're here, duh." And she's like, "But I thought you loved me." And he's like, "I do, with whatever I have left after I gave parts of me to these women." And she's like, "Oh no." And then she wakes up. It was all a dream. And because I remember thinking, and I was thinking, wow, I was a virgin when I got married, so I wouldn't have had women, but my wife would have had a pretty sizable group of men. Salute to her, no judgment. Kudos. She did it better than she did youth and young adulthood way better than I did. And so this book goes on and on to talk about how, the first 3 chapters, and it's just fresh in my mind, heartbreak is the problem. Heartbreak is the worst possible thing. And so if you give your heart to someone, then you could have your heart broken if you don't get married and have 10 kids. So, but then in chapter 6 or 7, there's this example of this magic string story where this guy, every time he pulls a string and hard parts of his life get passed over, so he gets to the end of his life and he laments not having gone through the hard things. And I was just like, what the hell, man? I thought you set me up to think heartbreak and badness is to be avoided at all costs, and then here it is. Oh, big contradiction. That was the twist in the middle, and then the big finish. It finishes with what we call purity culture, and you can't have any fun, you can't have any desires, you can't trust your heart or your genitals or your head, and
those shifty genitals.
Those genitals will get you every time. And not even just genitals.
To be trusted.
The genitals.
Yeah. Nice Monty Python reference there. Yeah. The whole thing is just this treatise on how to avoid human connection with people that you might be romantic. Oh, well, it's heteronormative, so people of the opposite sex. Your relationships can't get too deep because that's for your spouse. And then the great irony is most of these Christians get married and don't have a lot of connection and don't have a lot of sex. And so that's the funny twist ending, the big finish. That's not actually in the book. It's just sort of what happened to the guy who wrote it. Who, by the way, was Japanese American, and no one knew because he hid it because his name was Harris. And
I did not know that.
I knew.
see, and so yeah, if he wants to make a comeback, it should not be in the purity world. It should be in race, and why he forsook his side, that whole part of his identity as an Asian American man. Plus, and the great other twist,
This might be me change my book that I'm bringing today.
Oh shit!
Actually.
Oh,
No,
on
in
the
a
fly.
good way. In a good way.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I'll just close by saying I think he should, he shouldn't talk about purity culture because nobody wants to hear him talk about purity culture, good or bad. Time's over. Time's up. Can't come back from that. But what he could do is say, yeah, surprise, Japanese American, and I've denied myself leaning into this part of me. And besides, even if his name was Japanese American, he would have never been the face of American purity culture, which is very racist. And so, so he, in a sense, it's a victory for a Japanese American. He's now one of my Japanese American heroes who has overcome the racist systems put in place, especially by American purity culture, to rise to the top, make millions of dollars, become a mega church pastor. Kudos to you, Joshua Harris. I yield my time. Hope I didn't go too long.
Oh my God.
Wow. Opened up with a I love Joshua Harris rant. That I did not see this coming.
See,
Holy
twist
cow.
ending. Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
That was amazing. How was anyone supposed to go after that? What the fuck,
Yeah.
man?
Seriously.
I wrote notes.
I'm going to stick with the book I was going to bring, but man, tempting me to change up midstream.
Sorry, man.
I'll do an honorable mention for that book.
Yeah. And now I want to know what
I
that
like
book
that.
is.
Yeah,
no.
I'll do an honorable mention for sure. Or I can do
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're making up the rules as we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Just
Let's do it.
like Doge. It's okay.
Yeah, whatever.
This is
It's whatever.
So good.
all right. Justin, I think you volunteered.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
well,
I'm
I'll start with the book I was going to bring, and
Yes.
okay, because the book I was going to bring, I actually brought for one reason and one reason only. It's called The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Okay,
I keep getting recommended this by the library.
It is okay. So I'm going to say two things in its positive category. Okay, number one. It's just well written. Like, the characters are well written. The book, it moves at a good pace. It just, for my eyes and the way I read, it's just like real easy. But that's the other thing. It's not really a book that's like trying to say something. I mean, things are said. There's like nobles and civilization. There's an empire expanding. There's all the politics of like a empire that overextends itself and starts running out of money and has to oppress people in the process. Like, that's in there. It's the subtext, but it's just like part of the story. It's not really trying to say something. Not that I don't like reading things that say something, but it's just sometimes it's nice to be like, I'm just going to curl up with this. There's going to be a bunch of dudes and a few other types of people and a few women too, like all kinds in this book. And some are straight and some are gay, and it's just not remarked upon. And they're going to go on an adventure. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be cruel. It's going to be strange. There's a twist, and it's just nice. I can't really get into the plot that much, other than to say like it just kind of starts out and it starts very small. The first book is very just character driven, and there's these plots, and there's there's like a noble that's like studying for a tournament, and he's like conflicted about that. And there's this dude like out on his own. He's got 9 fingers. We don't know why. You'll find out. And he kind of is on this weird odyssey through the woods, and there's wizards and empires and stuff. And it's just kind of good popcorn. Like, you read it, and it's kind of like it reads a little bit like a screenplay. Like, you can, like, you're thinking about it thinking about like this is how this would be shot. This is like HBO is probably going to pick it up at some point. The first 3 seasons will be amazing. Then they'll decide to do something on their own, and it'll be shit. But for a brief moment in this first book, it's going to be beautiful.
You had Game of Thrones season 8 trauma.
Yeah, I do. Because Game of Thrones seasons like 1 through 3 were just peak television, and then the rest happened. And so And the actors knew it the last season too. It's like I think everybody just knew it. I will say this actually on the Game of Thrones thing. There are a few episodes of season 8 that I do enjoy. I think the third episode, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, like that's actually a good episode because it's like before the siege. They're just kind of sitting around just talking, like talking about life. That's actually I like that episode a lot. Other episodes, complete shit.
Is that the last season? 8?
Yeah, the last season of Game of Thrones. Yeah, there are a couple episodes that I actually.
It's the only
really
one I
enjoy.
watched.
Yeah. Well, any
that
other
was a
season
choice.
was better.
That was a choice.
I enjoyed it.
Actually, I do. I do have a thing about that because I think if you just watched that season on its own, and we're just kind of like passively, consuming it without a lot of, I think maybe it wouldn't be so bad. It's just like
it was a little confusing.
Yeah.
But I watched some of the first season, but I was like, I'm out. This is fucked up. This is
it is fucked up for sure.
I don't need this. The world is bad enough. I'm weak. I know.
Yeah. So the Blade itself, back to that. There's some of the little back things like it's the Lord of the Rings as directed by Kurosawa, and I actually think that's probably a good description of this. So
is that like a Rorschach test on the cover? Like it looked like a gun at first. Now it says Blade or.
No, it's just a guy with a sword and.
Oh no, but the thing
itself.
underneath it, the drippy thing.
Oh, the ink blots.
Yeah,
I think it's supposed to be a blood splatter, but it looks
I see
like
a butterfly.
Yeah. You see a butterfly?
I see happiness.
Yeah. I see like maybe it's a man kind of like standing.
Oh no, it's a man laying down who's been
I
shot.
saw the two towers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, 9/11, not
Blake, what do you
Lord of the
see?
Rings.
Yeah.
The thing is I knew you were referencing 9/11. I was right there with you. She's talking.
I do see it now.
I was expecting.
I'm not going to unsee the two towers.
I don't see it.
Jet fuel can
still see
burn
puppies.
steel beams.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to turn into like a 9/11 truther podcast.
I see the man on the grassy
that'll
knoll.
be my honorable mention though, and I only mentioned it because of Scott talking about hiding Asian identity. There's this book called Babel by R.F. Kwong, I think is
I've heard of that.
name.
Oh yeah, that's on my list.
So yeah, she wrote The Poppy War and a few other ones. I haven't read that, but this one takes place in roughly like the 1800s, like height of the British Empire, and there is a boy whose family in China dies of plague or some kind of pandemic or something, and he is adopted by a professor in England, and is basically kind of like, you can come with me because you're really gifted in this knowledge that we need. There's like subtle magic involved. It's like an alternate history of this time period where it's like the British Empire is developing magical technology somewhat, and they need people that can learn a lot of different languages. That's kind of part of it, and he's very gifted in languages. But it's like first chapter, it hits hard on these like immigrant themes of like, he cognizantly realizes very quickly, I have to drop this identity and be British if I want to survive. So he renames himself Robin Swift and like kind of goes on this academic route. I haven't completed the book, so I felt like I couldn't really recommend it. But like you were talking about that about Josh Harris, I was like, oh, that fits this particular book very well. And it was good. It's actually very good for me to read because there are just aspects of that I've never had to think about. But for it to be presented in a way that is just very brilliantly written, like R.F. Kwong is a fantastic writer. And so I think it's a good story, and there's mysteries, and there's like just the kind of the British occultishness kind of getting thrown in there too. So I would definitely recommend that one.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you for talking about those books, Tori. What are you reading?
So the most recent fiction book that I have read is actually The Hobbit, which is very interesting. Seen the movies several times. Hadn't read the book before. Didn't even realize it came out in 1937, which is wild. But I was like, oh, I should read this. So I downloaded it from the library. Got on my little Libby app and listened to it over the weekend. And I've really enjoyed it. It is not actually, it's weird. It's like it has the same bones as the movies, but like the actual body is very, very different.
It's a short book, and they made 9 hours of movie out of it. So
it's a short book with like 7 acts for some reason, and like they're just bopping around from place to place. But yeah, I've really been immersing myself in Middle Earth lately, because I think that there's so much like resilience there in unlikely places and characters that I really am appreciating right now in the midst of everything that's going on. And so I was like, oh, this seems like it'd be a really great place to like spend some more time. And you know, the Rings of Power just wrapped up, which I personally really liked. The second season, rather, I should say, for those listening back in the archives, the second season just wrapped up. And so, but like really enjoying Bilbo's like little adventures, and the idea, I like the fact that like Gandalf is sort of presented as like putting small creatures up to shenanigans at all times, and that's just like his side quest that he does when he doesn't have other things to do, or when he should be doing other things but doesn't want to be doing them. And so I find that particular piece of things just incredibly adorable. But the idea of like Bilbo being this kind of pampered little wealthy privileged hobbit who doesn't go on adventures because like that's for weird people and people who like to be uncomfortable, and I like my tea and my house and my blanket and my pipe, and I like sitting on the porch and like, and then he gets kind of like not shoved out the door literally, but sort of shoved out the door and put on this adventure that he has no skills for really, but he just doesn't know it yet. Like everything about this I completely love. I think it's absolutely adorable, and also is very heartening, right? And again, like as this entire world was created by someone who had just like immense trauma from trench warfare in World War I, and like created these worlds to literally escape like the horrors that he was seeing and experiencing on a daily basis.
He wrote the first line of The Hobbit, I think, in the trenches.
I think so.
Like,
I think so.
There lived a hobbit in a hole. Like he was living like.
He's like, but not a gross
Tolkien
hole.
was living in a hole. Like,
let's imagine a hole,
clear. But lovely.
Yeah, he makes it very clear. He's like, it's
no
not
mustard gas.
Right, and just his love of like the countryside and like really kind of shines through. But then I love that he forces his main character into all of these situations where he has not developed any real skills, and so he has to just do it on the fly, and he just has to like come up with his own resilience on the fly, right? When he's like in the troll caves and is completely lost, there's no light, no nothing, and he's like, I want to just sit down on the ground and cry and give up because I'm stuck. I've lost everyone. I have no way out of here. This is a completely desperate situation. I have no reason to think that I will survive it. What do I do? And it very much comes back to like, just do the next thing, man. Like you can feel your feelings, totally valid. And also we're just going to take the next step. And so again, given everything that is going on in the world, like just I feel like so many of us are in that moment of like kind of being pushed out the door by circumstances, by life and what's going on in the world right now, and not feeling like we have the skill set or the tools, or we haven't developed the resilience that we need to be out and like fighting for our rights. But having to go out anyway, and you just learn it on the fly, sort of like we're doing with this podcast, as my friend Mark likes to say, building the plane in the air, right? Like that's kind of that's the position we found ourselves in. And so like, let's just do it. Let's go all the way in and see what we can find on the other side of that. See what we can find once we go through that moment of when we like sit in that moment of despair and say, okay, I have to stand up and take a step. And so that's what I really enjoyed about that particular book right now reading it at this moment in my life in world history. And, I'm sure it's something that I will read probably many dozens of times before I die. So
yeah,
My dad has a annual tradition of reading The Lord of the Rings every year.
Oh,
Like that is something he
that.
does.
Including The
And
Hobbit.
that's the thing I don't remember is whether but he gets something out of it. I mean, he did it for a very long time.
That's amazing.
I
love
I
that.
mean, that's totally, I totally agree with that, Tori. Just that, finding solace and encouragement in fiction when like the real world is sort of upsetting. That's awesome.
You know that
Yeah.
speech
And
at the end of the movie he gives? Like, I hadn't read The Hobbit since I was in like junior high, but there was that rousing speech in the movie where he talks about why he's sacrificing, right? And I asked a Tolkien scholar, I'm like, isn't that amazing that he wrote that? And he's like, that wasn't in the book. I'm like, oh. I was devastated. I'm like, I wanted so bad for that to be in the, because that's such a beautiful speech that he gives, and it's like a montage of his little hobbit and the adventure that he's just been on, and he's giving the moral reason why you stand up for people, and it seems so important that I literally, I hadn't read in like 40 years, but like I was just like, yeah, that's in the book, yeah, right, and like, no, it's not. So, I was heartbroken.
Well, that's a good segue, actually, Tori, that you had that for my book, because that anecdote that Justin mentioned of like that at one point Tolkien wrote, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, or whatever the line is. I know that's not exactly it, but that was just like an impulse thought, or like an automatic thought, and what led him to write it is like, what the hell is a hobbit? And then like it sort of led to this thing. The author that I'm going to talk about had a similar experience. The author is Alan Moore, who wrote most famously Watchmen, the graphic novel, which like generally is like usually listed as the best graphic novel of all time. Also wrote V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is, the books are very different than the weird Sean Connery movie that ended Connery's career. Very, very different. He also wrote a long graphic novel about Jack the Ripper called From Hell. And it was in the process of writing that book that he wrote the line, "The one place gods inarguably exist is in our minds, where they are real beyond refute, in all their grandeur and monstrosity." And that line that he wrote for a character like stuck with him, and he was like, okay, well, maybe I should think about this like occult stuff that I'm sort of aware of, and then eventually like started calling himself a magician and like studying various occult things, and working it into a lot of his writing as well. So he wrote a comic book series called Promethea, which is all about this this spirit, sort of this woman that lives in people's imaginations, and she's essentially a goddess that if someone invokes her name or like makes a piece of art, then they become Promethea and like have her powers and things like that. And it's this whole dance of all of that. But he wrote this huge tome. It's like basically a reference book type graphic mixed with a graphic novel and some other stuff called The Moon and Serpent Bumper Book of Magic. And the other person who co-wrote it with him is Steve Moore. No relation, I guess, but they were collaborators. And there's just something about the way in which he talks about how notions of magic and belief and creativity are sort of all kind of the same thing. He essentially in some places says that like when a human makes art, they're essentially emulating the divine. They're creating something out of nothing. And that often like these symbols can be really meaningful for understanding ourselves. And like, there's something, I've been through like a prolonged period where spirituality and that sort of stuff just hasn't clicked for me. And I think there's, for some people, like, and we all know each other from sort of this deconstruction online space, etc. And for several years now, it's just not been a priority for me. But now I can, the way in which he sort of frames things, it, I don't know, it's palatable. And it's like this way of approaching, I don't even know whether it's like spiritual practice or belief or anything like that, but even just the symbolism and this understanding that that essentially like the things that happen in our mind have a very significant impact on us, is really powerful. And there's something about sort of feeling like you can, like you have some agency. Because I think that for the way a lot of us were taught religion or belief is that these are things you have to understand, and these things are sort of happening to you, and tough shit if like you don't. But like this is sort of like a practice that you can elect to do. I don't know, and it's a very broad book, but it is probably likely because like I don't know if any of you have listened to this very popular podcast, the Telepathy Tapes, lately. But that's like a whole show that sort of delves into probably like new agey sort of ideas, and I don't even know whether he would like that term, but all that to say, there's something animating and something interesting there, and that's why I'm sort of digging it.
And that's how Blake got into Scientology.
Not quite Scientology. No,
I feel like Alan Moore, whatever religion Alan Moore could come up with, if he was interested in such a thing, would just like beat Scientology to pieces.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
No,
like that.
yeah.
In the pre-show talk you were mentioning, like he knowingly worships a false god, the snake god Glycon, like, and that's the thing that you don't really know is like, is he being sincere? Is this a bit? Is this all symbolism? Does he see it as real? But then the way in which he writes this book, it's like, if you're just starting out on this, then of course you would think it's a symbol and not a real thing. And that works and that has value too. So like, why does something being literally true matter? Because like fiction can be just as inspiring.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And he has a story where he is convinced he met John Constantine, which is another one of the characters he created, like in a bar. Like he just was in a bar one time and out of a back room there he was. It was John Constantine. Gave me a wink and walked out the bar. And it's like, I mean, he says it much more convincing than I just did, but it's like, and yeah, you're like, is this a bit? Are you serious? And Grant Morrison, who's another Scottish, I should say. Sorry, Grant. Comic book writer, like, who kind of does the same thing. He talks about meeting Superman or a guy dressed up as Superman and having a talk with, like, it's like, are you being serious? Like, are you?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, at a certain level, I think the challenge is like, does it matter? You know?
Yeah, and and that's sort of the fun part, is like, even if you're only doing this for yourself, like, why not allow yourself that sort of thing? And I think that I don't know, that I'm always several years behind. So like, so I know like a lot of post-Christian, post-evangelical people don't like do tarot and stuff. And like he talks about the tarot symbolism and all this other stuff that like that is clicking for me in a way that it didn't before. And I think it's because he has this capacity to provide a narrative and weave like a very meaningful narrative. And that's fun. Mm-hmm. And whether I like become a card carrying a cultist or something, I don't know that that's in the cards. But
I don't know. The magician is strong.
Well, we have to be like, Blake, we need to get coffee and
yeah.
Discuss your walk.
Yeah. You're...
Oh, God.
Oh, grody, Tori.
No. Sorry.
Tori took it to the next level.
I mean, you had to make that joke. If that joke popped in my head, I would make it. But
I teed it up for Tori, and she took the swing. And
sorry.
Respect.
It was too tempting.
I put it there.
Tempting to not.
And,
we're all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to do it.
So if you can't tell how we all know each other, that's how.
Religious trauma.
Yeah, baby.
So talking about it on the internet since 2016.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Oh man. Well, how should we wrap this up? Does anybody have a good idea for like another quick like round robin question? I could go basic. Like, do you have a do y'all have a preferred way of reading? Do you like to read? Do you like audiobooks?
E-readers.
Do you like print books? E-readers.
Yeah.
Like, what's your
Okay.
What's your go-to?
Okay. Whew. I want to be the kind of person that reads paper books. Okay? I have this as a paper book in front of me. I bought the second one as a paper book.
So you are that person.
But I love my Kindle.
Me too.
Or whatever e-reader you're supposed to say
yeah.
now. I don't remember. I just happen, I only bought it once, guys. But I read so much faster if it's an e-reader. Like I feel like I do. It feels every 10 seconds I'm getting a reward of flipping the little page, and I feel like I read paper books so much slower. And honestly, I find that I don't remember them as well for whatever reason, which is not what I would have expected.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those people that's like audiobooks aren't reading. I'm like, no, that's reading. But I just personally don't like connect that way with books. But I feel like I'm a paper book reader, but practically the e-reader is the way to go for me.
Well, this is such a great question. And I listen to fiction and read like paper nonfiction because I want to be able to take notes, generally speaking. So that's usually how it shakes out for me. And I have, so if you're borrowing a book from me, it's all marked up, because I have a lot of thoughts and things connect for me in ways, and I want to be able to write it down. So yeah, my books, my nonfiction books are very, very marked up and might have like little sticky notes or other things in them.
A glimpse into Tori's mind.
Yep.
What about you, Scott?
Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure Tori listened to my audiobook, so that was the exception. Right? Didn't you say you listened to it?
No, you gave me a copy. Remember?
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I know I gave you a copy, but I thought you said you were listening to it. Anyway,
I heard it in your voice when I was reading it.
Okay, maybe that's what you told me. Yeah. So I actually have a question for Justin before I answer. So are you implying that being a physical book reader is like the morally superior or more purist way to read?
I don't think that it is, but I think I'm supposed to think that it is. Does that make sense?
Okay. No, I know there are people who hate e-readers, and I will
like
only read.
Like a moral hierarchy of books somehow, and like paper books are supposed to be at the top, and I just reject the hierarchy.
Yeah,
I think I do too. It's more like I want to be. There's like I will. Okay, it is. I will say this, and this isn't putting a moral hierarchy on it. But I feel like there is a romance with sitting with a physical book
Yes.
in your book nook on a rainy day that isn't captured in the same way with an e-reader or a,
Yeah.
audiobook. Like that's not morally superior. There's like and maybe that romance will be gone in 20 years, but like I was born at the right time to have that kind of like,
Right.
This is the preferred or most desirable way to consume a book in this kind of like romantic kind of fashion.
Got it. So when all the trees are gone, the next generation will be.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not trying to put a moral hierarchy on it. It's just there is this kind of like there's more of a nostalgia or a romance to it than how I usually read books, which is like, in my bed with my head propped up on a pillow with like the e-reader like this until I start falling asleep and it falls on my face. Like that's how I actually read books.
That's great.
And someday that will be the romanticized way to.
Yes.
Back in our day, we read the ebooks. We didn't plug the USB cable into our head. We read them and we took our time. And we read each word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like you. I'm like a yes and. There's. If I know the person, I like to have the book. So like on my bookshelf to my left here is, it's got Blake's book and Brad's book and when you all write a book, it'll be here too because I like having the physical thing object. Mm-hmm. But in general, I love my Kindle and I don't even have like the fancy one. I just have like the plain old text paperwhite one. And to Justin's point, I feel like I can read faster or it feels faster. And then as my eyesight gets worse, you can like make the print bigger, and I'm on in about 5 years. There's gonna be like 3 words on a page as I'm zipping through, because my eyesight's going. But yeah, because to me the process of reading is the key. There are people. I used to teach future English teachers, and we talked about how the reading process is. Some people have to sound out every word as they're reading, and then go very slowly. And for a lot of people, they remember more when they do it that way. But for a lot of people also, you kind of just zip through a line and you're not sounding out. You're not listening to Morgan Freeman in your head read each word or something, right? And for those people, they retain more and it's more experiential even to sort of zip through. And so like I would never tell anyone how they should read it, but they should just, enjoy. And if you're enjoying the content, whether it's audiobook, whether it's a graphic novel or a comic book, great. Because in my mind, we just need more people to read stuff that's like, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Because I just really believe in the process of putting information and putting stories into our minds, in our psyches, to expand our thinking and to expand our understanding of the world and human nature and all these things. So, sorry, that's my old English professor coming out. I'll put him back now. So.
No, but I love that. I mean, I'm also a bit of a like a format anarchist. Like I'll do whatever. I love I do love a well printed book and everything, but I also like ebooks a lot. And I tend to, because I do read a lot of like comic books digitally, either through the library, through the Hoopla app, which if you like graphic novels, graphic novels are an expensive hobby or interest, but Hoopla, if you have even the most basic color tablet, they have so many comics like through your local library. It is
awesome.
It is incredible. So like I tend to gravitate towards like iPads because of that over Kindles.
Yeah, you're tablet shaming me, man. It's
but
now I got to
no, I'm not because I do like Kindles a lot too. They're a lot easier on your eyes over a long period. It's just because I do read a lot of comics. Like if I'm gonna have one device, it'll likely be an iPad or like a tablet.
Yeah, because the art in comics is great. It's part of the experience.
Right. And so the other great thing about reading digitally in my mind is that like with most new smartphones, you can do like text to speech, and like the most recent like Kindle iOS app, it'll, even if you don't have the corresponding Audible, you can start, it can like use just the Siri automatic voice to read it to you. And like with that, you have to keep the screen on because it's not an audiobook that's playing. It's
Right.
actually like physically, it's working its way down the screen and reading each word. And it's never going to be like a professional audiobook that's been recorded, but it's really good in a pinch. And there's just a number of great things about like digitally, if there's like a word that I don't know, generally like they have dictionaries built in, so you just
Yeah.
highlight it and
Yep.
you see
I
it.
love that.
That's so awesome. Like, you know, and I when I'm reading a print book, I circle the word, but then I have to, you know, get my phone out and read it. But if I'm reading on my phone or a tablet, then I can just do that right there, and it feels magical. So like,
Hell yeah.
I love reading in every format, and I think I do think that being sort of precious about it's not for me. Like I do know some people who only read comic or like only read print, only read digital, but I like it all. So and just like you, Scott, anything that gets someone excited, like if they gravitate to a particular medium, then why yuck their yum, you know? So, silly,
Yeah.
because it's fun to read.
Yeah.
Should be.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and this is exactly.
And we
the
made it
sort
under
of
an
thing-
hour.
We did it.
This has been the sort of thing that I hope this show will be, just sort of a fun way to talk to folks about what's
Yeah.
what's
And now, can we
been-
list the books in the show notes too, so people can?
Yeah, absolutely.
can,
And I think we should.
To bookshop.org or something.
Yeah,
to-
bookshop for sure.
Yep. So we can drop the bookshop links to all the books we mentioned, so that you can find them and help support the show. Working on a little affiliate link action
Ooh.
there.
Nice.
We haven't built out all the eventual audience support stuff, but we'll have that pretty soon. But Tori and Justin, thank you for joining Scott and me today. Where can people find you online? Plug your own shows. Anything else you want to mention?
Oh my gosh. We have so much stuff between the
Yeah.
two of us.
Okay, we're about to go over an hour now.
Yeah, you
so
got
Uh,
Yeah.
forget
Or
what
we
I
can
said.
put it.
Yeah, go for it, Tori.
So Justin and I host a podcast called Go Home Bible, You're Drunk. That is an ex-evangelical podcast talking about, the Bible and weird stuff that people do with it, and evangelical culture and things like that. I am mainly on Blue Sky at this point, toriglass.bsky.social. I always have to stop and think about what that username is. And I have a podcast that I do with Benjamin Fay called White Homework, where we talk about anti-racism and collective liberation and try to find some like encouraging stories to like keep us going as we're, again, dealing with all of the things that are happening right now.
Yeah. I'm mostly hanging around on Blue Sky, Justin Gentry .bsky. The things. So that's where you can find me most of the time. Occasionally I'm on Threads, usually clapping back to some manosphere blogger. That's mainly
Doing
what
the
I do
Lord's
over
work.
there. It's just so that's where you can find me. In addition to Go Home Bible, You're Drunk, the Reverend Sarah Heath and I put together a lovely podcast called The Rev Covery, which is a ex-evangelical podcast geared mostly towards ministers, and that kind of just the unique thing of like, I don't believe this, but I'm paid to believe it for other people. And so like kind of that unique experience. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now, but we have like 100 episodes, interviews, all kinds of stuff, resume building, just because when you're a discipleship coordinator, that doesn't translate to a normal job very well. So trying to figure out that kind of thing. I've also started a new little podcast, in the similar vein to this podcast, in the sense of like we're trying to we want to focus on important things, but not like really. We just want to have fun with our friends and talk about things we love, and so started a podcast with the lovely Megan Crozier called Identity Crisis, where we talk about science fiction, fantasy. It's movies, it's books, it's a little bit of everything. I think everyone on this podcast has been or will be on that show talking about the things. So you can check that out at Identity Crisis on most of the socials.
Lots of options here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad you all were our inaugural episode. It's really great to be in the space with y'all, and we've all been on each other's different projects and podcasts, and I just think that's amazing. So I'm honored to know y'all, and glad you're here.
Yeah. Thank you both for coming on. Scott, you've got a couple of shows too. If you want to mention those.
Okay. I have a podcast called Chapel Probation, which is mostly about surviving evangelical Christian religious higher education, and we kind of just branched out to start talking about other things too. So, because we're kind of kicking a dead horse, and I have a spinoff from that called The Horny Chapel, which is just kind of an Asian American centered look at purity culture and the aftermath and kind of putting your life back together after. But it's pretty universal what we talk about. It's just the co-host Priska and I are both Asian American, so we tend to use that as our lens. But really, we talk to everybody, and we'll probably have all of you on at some point on that one too. So
awesome. And just to round it out, I do a show that is on a pretty intermittent schedule right now called Exvangelical, and I'm working on a new show that will feature author interviews called The Good Books. So if you are into, listening to authors talk about their books, it'll be sort of similar to this one. And you can find me primarily on Blue Sky at brchastain.social on there. And yeah, thank you for listening to this first episode. Hope you subscribe and are kind, and if you choose to leave a review on a first episode, if you're that type of person that exists on the internet, please be nice. And thank you for listening.